Welcome back to the podcast For the Love of Humanity. My name is Ashley. I also go by Femmyst on Instagram. And I want to start by acknowledging the current experience of this podcast. So, the current iteration of this is me delving into my experience with my own personal transformation for the purposes of sharing, for the purposes of teaching, for the purposes of learning as I go, and to demonstrate what I believe is the inherent ability for anyone to create change, to create a life that they enjoy, or to reveal the fact that it's already available to them, it's already possible, it's already happening, and to release resistance around that. So, this is to trigger memory of how incredible you are, memory of how enjoyable life is, memory around your innate potential. And I think that's all we can really do. Mostly, that's what we're doing. But we can enjoy the process of transformation and experience because what else are we going to do while we're here? Right? We can straight enjoy, but trust me, I've contemplated on this for a long time. We can straight up enjoy and like lounge in contemplation for a while, and then we're moved, we're like roused up out of our just like laying in our oyster eating grapes, and we're roused out of that state to change, to transform, to move again. And this is innate, so like it's already happening. And this level of awareness and acceptance would have been really beautiful to have at multiple moments during my transformation, my journey, my experience, my remembrance of how good life can be. And I hope that just saying that is helpful for somebody, because if I knew it was an innate process already unraveling and I could see already how that was true, and I could believe in the truth of that based on even my own repeated experience through this process, then I probably could have let go even more, surrendered even more into the process. And it would have been a little smoother, let's say, at points. But hey, our ride's our ride. So we get what we we get what we came for, and we get what we get when we get it. So I want to just talk a little bit about the name Femmyst, because I've heard some people say feminist, and that's interesting because there's no N in it. But either way, Femmyst is the name, and it was an interesting creation, a consciously chosen name. And I'd been doing some reading with the great work and some research into alchemy. And it was really something that came together kind of like, I was doing this reading and it was like, pick your favorite sort of animals, beasts, and what would you, if you could make yourself into any sort of thing, or if you could have a mascot, right? And I always think a griffin is really cool because it's a combination of things. So what would you have? What would you make? And that's kind of the flavor of how Femmyst came to be. And to break it down, and I've put it on my page, but to break it down here, it really does encompass everything that I've been experiencing in my beliefs in a really cool way. So Femmyst is feminine. It's the experience of the mystical and the mystic. It's the experience of alchemy and spiritual alchemy at that. So that's what Femmyst is for me. It's a feminine alchemy that is mystical, that is honoring the inner mystic, that is the inner mystic's path toward refinement, because it isn't static. We aren't stagnant. We're moving, right? We're evolving, we're growing, we're expanding. And so it's sort of honoring or paying homage to the fact that that's already happening, like it or not. And so for me, I thought, well, I have this energy, I have this, like, what am I directing it towards? What am I, initiating towards? What am I intending with my life? I have this life force energy, I have this experience, and so many things brought me to this anyway. I want to say, like, this is a culmination point. This is a boiling point. This happens to us over and over again, archetypally in our lives. We come to these boiling points. We come to these moments of confluence of like everything just smashes together and you're like, duh, light goes off. Right. Obviously. But it's so crazy because they're the simplest truths and the simplest things that we come to. And so for me, having children was part of that. It was part of that whole awakening. There's a bigger purpose. There's something going on here. I'm a part of something. I'm a part of a chain when I brought kids into the world, and I realized what a privileged experience that was. Arguably, there's some stuff that goes along with it. There's some growing pains. There's some challenges. There's the own unique experience of like looking at what you thought you were going to be as a parent as a child, like, oh, I'm going to be this type of parent. There's the coming face to face with the way, you internalized parenthood and childhood. There's the way that you now express it and project it. There's the way that you want to be, the idealized version. There's the parts that you enjoy, and then the parts that you're like, I'd trade this for a higher experience. I would trade my own petty experience of something for a higher experience of it. And so I think those are all natural, wonderful inclinations and desires. So directing this became, or at least working with the direction that was already happening, because I see a lot of this as predetermined in a sense. Archetypally, there's a structure to it that seems predetermined, and you can partner with it, you can resist it, you can, work within it. And that's all individual choice, experience, subjectivity, right? So for me, alchemy was very interesting, this idea of turning lead into gold. And spiritual alchemy was even more interesting. And so it's about this like aspiration and this progression and this ascension, this inevitable, every time I work at something, or every time I put my focus and attention and energy and intention and hope and faith and all the good stuff, I come out higher up every time. I come out with more. I come out with more gratitude, more expansion, more capacity. And that's the great work. That's the magnum opus. And so we're ascending, we're going up this spiral, and we're evolving, we're getting better, we're getting more efficient. Like that's nature's aim. That's the aim that's of progression, right? It's not defective. It's not to die off per se, although death happens and that's part of the cycle. It's not, if you look around you, the grand cycle is not just like, let's be malfunctioning, let's be completely inefficient. Like that's not the way nature operates, given its own latitude, right? And we can be wonderful stewards of that. So I see myself as stewarding and co-creating with my spiritual alchemy, with my spiritual aspiration, in my magnum opus, and my great work. And I want to talk about it on the practical level of every day. This is how it feels. This is what it looks like for me. I love talking about it on the esoteric, alchemical level, because I find it to feel very enchanting in a hero's journey kind of way. And also it makes sense to me when I consider the chemical experience of it, like the cyclical experience of transformation and transmutation. And so my personal development, I've always been interested in personal development. It's something that, I mean, even through high school, first couple of jobs, career, working as a professor at a college, like all of this was surrounding personal development work, bettering the personal experience. And in the beginning, sometimes it was around goal focus, sometimes it was around getting something material. And then I sort of came to, okay, well, regardless, I want to feel a certain state. And there are states that I could be experiencing in a more expanded way. Or I'd notice where I'd have a loop of an experience, of an emotional experience that I didn't quite enjoy. And once I had the awareness that I didn't quite enjoy it, I also equally felt the awareness that there was another way. And then it was like, okay, well, how do I bridge the gap between the experience I'm having right now that doesn't feel so great to the experience of this ease around this thing, even if it's just simply learning how to use my mind in the best way to let go faster or let go graciously. For me, there's always an available better experience. And for a while, that was a bit crushing. My perfectionism really ran with that. Like, where's the conclusion? Okay, well, let's just run to the end. Um, and then I realized, no, like that's the exciting part of the journey, is that you can always experience something a little bit better next time, a little bit more expanded, a little bit more joyous. And it doesn't have to take away from the current experience. The current experience can be completely joyous, and you can have yet another joyful experience, yet another incredible experience. And not to state that that's what we're achieving is like only enjoyable, only great. That's not necessarily what I'm saying, but for people who are in pain and for people who are experiencing things, and innately there's a better way to experience this. There's another way for me to experience this. And I don't just mean materially. I mean, I'm feeling pained about this thing. I'm feeling helpless. Is there a way to feel different than helpless? And I'm a big fan of Dr. David R. Hawkins. He outlines an emotional scale. Like, is there a way I can move a couple rungs up this emotional scale while I'm having this experience? Can I rest in the fact that I'm here enjoying my life, even when I'm experiencing something in the moment that I'm not enjoying? And that's, all the imagery we have about becoming as deep as the ocean, right? And what's, happening on the ocean floor is not the same as what we see on the top, the waves and the ripples and so what's my countenance underneath everything? What's the essence and the core of who I am? And how does that feel about the overall situation that's happening? And I realized that when I'm in this expanded state, fully heart open, it's like, I'm just happy to be here. And cool, whatever happens. Like, if you think about it as like being at some sort of fair, and there's going to be some things you like to see, some things you don't, some smells you like to smell, some smells you don't. Like, if you treat it as though this is just a passing experience, yet another passing experience I'm getting to have, overall, I'm grateful to just have the experience of being here in general, then everything almost is a delight because it's something new. It's something different. It's not the same monotonous experience. Like think of Groundhog Day and how maddening that is. There have been multiple different movies. Like there's one with Andy Samberg, I think, too, where he experiences the same day and they're attempting to escape it. And in ways, that's the archetypal storyline coming up of what it feels like to be looping in experiencing condition that we don't enjoy. And there are ways out of it. And we see it all around us. We see people who are not living their own personal hell. They're actually living their own personal heaven. And it's not the things in their life that are creating that. It's the mindset. It's the orientation to life. It's the way they relate to life itself that is driving this underlying feeling of contentment. And so when I realized that, I had a chunk of experiences that weren't lining up with that, I started to, okay, personal development, what does that mean? And then I started to look at what are the highest forms of personal development. And for me, what kept coming in was this innate sense of spirituality and this innate sense of transformation and this emergence of an awareness of a greater truth than what my mind had been telling me was the truth of existence. And so I had experiences where I questioned the nature of the universe, where I questioned the nature of God. If there was a God, what does God look like? What is this? What is creation? Is this, easily explainable by science? Is this just, random things that came together that created this completely repetitive, cyclical, overarching macro experience that feeds into a micro experience that's like a symphony? And how could that just be completely coincidental? And if it was coincidental and it was that intelligently unified and brought together in this beautiful way, then I didn't believe it. The truth for me is it's not coincidental. The truth for me is that there is divine, intelligent design behind everything, and that there's divinity all around and in everything. So those types of awarenesses and truths that came in started to feed me and nourish me and orient me towards a progression And in the beginning, as I said, if I would have been able to really enjoy the fact that it was unfolding and that it was happening anyway, and I could trust that, I wouldn't have to be so empowered, like pushed, pressured to like look for the right way and get the right way, right away kind of thing. And so I started to realize that some of these truths were actually taking the burden of searching and excavating. And like when I looked at it as hard work, I could flip the switch inside and look at it as a process of revealing and revelation instead of excavating. Instead of feeling like I was in this cave, I found myself to be in this cave when I awoke to the pain, when I awoke to the repetition, when I awoke to like the first stage in alchemy, right? Um, when I woke to that shadow aspect, that dark night of the soul, when I woke in that place, it felt as though I almost had to claw my way through rock. It really didn't seem at that point as though, like, there was obviously cracks of light and there was a spark internally that felt like truth, that I had felt enough of my connection to source and the divine that I was now motivated towards this. But it really felt as though it was an uphill battle, as opposed to letting go and realizing this is a natural, cyclical series of archetypal events that will lead me to an unraveling. It's actually an unraveling. And what I can set my intention on is to accept the unraveling, to remember that there is this divine blueprint archetype plan at work, and to allow its revelation, to not resist the revelation of it. So then that became like, oh, well, that's a heck of a lot easier than thinking I have to claw my way out of a cave or claw my way up a mountain with bloodied, battered fingers. Like it's not that. It's actually a letting go. It's actually a process of allowing a transformation to take hold of you, and you just go through it and you just breathe through it and you just stay conscious through it and you attend to it, really. And so this level of awareness became crucial because sometimes I'd forget, and sometimes when a particular experience would come up that I was very identified with, it would start to feel all over again like, oh no, what have I got to do? How do I have to fix this? What's the move? What's the right move? There's obviously a fork in the road here. Which one do I choose? Oh my gosh, I got to choose the right one. Otherwise I'm not making spiritual progress. I'm not making my own progress. So then, I had the particular experience of using my spirituality as another means to not measure up, as opposed to trusting that there was a greater process at work and a greater cycle. And in another episode, I'm going to talk about the different modalities that I used as just like points of introspection, because not one modality is going to teach us everything about ourselves. Like, astrology is really cool. It's a really interesting thing. And I can see a lot of symbolism in that repeats in my life. Like I see it. Um, and I use it, but I don't necessarily think it's the be all and end all. Human design, same thing. There are exceptional things that I've learned from human design that I'm like, oh my goodness, but I'm not becoming, a human design specialist. I think we learn about ourselves with whatever modality we choose to learn about ourselves from. And we're this like diamond, and whatever modality we choose is showing us from one lens, one perspective. We're looking internally at ourselves from one facet. And it's like this treasure map that you can use, but you can use multiple different treasure maps. It's not the only one. And gene keys. I love gene keys, right? And in my gene keys, for instance, my brand is to go from greed to aspiration to ascension. And doing this work, it makes so much sense. So I can see this. Now, am I ever going to let any of these modalities limit my potential of who I think I am? Absolutely not, because I've already come to the conclusion that I am connected to the allness. I'm connected to wholeness. There isn't a limit per se. And yet on another level, I understand there are limitations. So for me, I experienced the pain and the patterns. And then also there came in the awareness. When there was an awareness of the pain and the repetition of the pain, there became also the awareness of the potential. So it's like becoming aware that you're in a roundabout and you just keep going around, and that there are multiple exits. But if you were going so fast and you were only focused on what was going on inside your car, or you're only focused on feeling helpless, you wouldn't notice that there were several opportunities to get off on a different road. And so there was the awareness of truth, there was the awareness of potential, and there was the reality of my soul that I was becoming connected to, and that soul essence coming through. Like, well, who am I really at the core of all this? Because I know this is what I do in this scenario, and I know this is what I do based on this trigger, and I know this is what I do as a reaction to this happening. And I know this is what I do to keep this relationship feeling this way. And I know this is how I act when I'm out in public and dealing with a work event. And I know this is where I feel insecure if this part of me is looked at, touched, addressed, or feeling insecure. So I started to realize that there were all these aspects of me, and coming into touch with the more eternal qualities of myself, the soul, the essence, the spirit, and understand the archetypal feminine, meaning everything's already here. It's already whole. It's already like, that's the womb space through which everything is born. So there's an aspect of me that is able to create and create form and create personality and create identity and create experience and create attachment. But there's also a part of me that already exists as whole. There's a part of me that already is full circle through this whole thing. There's the feminine aspect of me that can trust in the process, that trusts to bring forth something. And the act of having a child and giving birth showed me how to trust in the process of gestation and the process of birth and the process of aftercare after birth. So because I'd had these innate experiences, they were there for me to lean into trusting the cyclical nature of, death, birth, rebirth, the cyclical nature of transformation, the cyclical nature of renewal. And my mom used to say to me all the time, like, this too shall pass, this too shall pass. And I used to want so badly for it to only mean that the bad stuff or the stuff that I didn't enjoy would pass, but the stuff that I loved would stay forever. And as I understood transformation, and the whole point is to release what has been outgrown, and knowing that what's truly true and the essence of what's meant to be will stay the course. And that's why alchemy for me felt like that. It answered that experience. Well, you get to make something gold, and the gold is what stays. And even if the gold is just like the memory, or if the gold becomes the conscious experience of just ultimately trusting and being grateful to be here, literally no matter what scenario comes at you, then that was good enough, right? That's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to create that experience in my life. So understanding this process and coming through this transformation, and understanding that I could take whatever in my life that wasn't feeling as though it was at its potential, that it could be better, I could experience this thing from a more exalted state. Or, when you're super happy and your heart's really open and certain things happen and you're like, oh yeah, that's great. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we can work with that. Like, you just seem to have the utmost patience. You feel fully resourced. You feel you can roll with it. And you reflect and you're like, a different version of me probably would have been tripped up by that, probably would have had a hard time with that, probably would have felt some frustration and pain around that. And yet look at how interesting and look at how wonderful it is that I can accept it when I'm in this open state. And how do I get that open state more of the time? And is that realistic? And what's the nature of life? Is that me thinking too pie in the sky, thinking that I could be blissful all the time? And it was really interesting to come through all those things and answer those questions for myself, and really feel the embodiment of that really shaking through my whole experience. So connecting with my soul, connecting with my essence, embodying that, making that the anchor, making that like my conscious North Star, that I am looking for greater and greater satisfaction in my life and the ability to have greater satisfaction regardless of the external circumstance. And also find a way that even when something painful is happening, to still have that add to the enjoyment of life, even if I'm not enjoying the feeling and emotion of it, that it's still part of the overall enjoyable experience of life. And that's my conscious North Star. And then that feels as though like I'm impregnated with my own true seed. Like it is done. It is done. I'm just awaiting the rebirth, and I'm just watching the transformation unfold. Takes the pressure off of having to do it and having to do it perfect and having to do it exactly right, and following whatever other person's advice is out there to do it and get it done because it has to be done in this way. And that's like leaning back on the fact that, the oak tree is already in the acorn. The experience of the oak tree, the potential for this acorn to become an oak tree is already in the seed point. So for the potential for me to experience my own exalted, soul-led, spirit-infused, essence potent life that feels like I really came and lived, like I really got it. I really did it. I left nothing on the table. I went for it. Means that that's my orientation, and I get to surrender into that, and I get to remember the fact that we all come with that potential. And that's something that I really, believe about Femmyst being an important part of that, my brand in speaking about transformation, because it's archetypal. We will all transform. We are already always transforming. Alchemy is already happening all of the time. On a micro scale, on a macro scale, it's already happening. It's happening in the small and the large. And you have your own unique way that will loosely conform to the process of alchemy. It will resemble it symbolically in some way. You already are conforming to this process of alchemy and transformation and transmutation as human beings we signed up for when we took a human body, when we came into this body. It will evolve. And when there's something that's malfunctioning, it will show itself. And we all have access to this. And so for me, this is like the mystic aspect. We all have the ability to know God from within, from the inside. We all have a piece of God within us. And I mean God is in like the animating force, source, the benevolent living potential that keeps life going. And we all have that inside. And because we all have that inside, we have the ability to heal from the inside. We have the ability to follow a journey and trust. We trust it becoming. We trust in our own becoming, the acorn oak tree, perfect analogy. And so the feminine way for me is the spiral. It's the intuitive, complete. It's the blueprint. It's the womb creative aspect that can create life out of components. That's the healing part. That's the internal part. That's the I don't need to tell anybody. Nobody credited me with this, and nobody can take it away from me because I'm creating this, me in co-creation with all there is, and with the knowing of all there is, knowing the fact that this is a benevolent experience. I already know that. I have the knowing in my body. Nothing could take that away from me at this point. Literally nothing. So there's nothing that initiates me but me and my experience with my soul, myself. And that's what the alchemical process is. It's like revealing the teacher and the student inside. So it's really beautiful and helpful that we have coaches and we have therapists and we have these modalities and people that can help us. But that's not the catalyzing factor. The catalyzing factor is already existent within all of us. It just already is. It's already a thing. It's already happening. And that's what I get to lean into when I think about the acorn and the oak tree and the blueprint and the fact that I have this connection internally. We're all mystics. We all have this experience and this ability. It's a form or stage or phase of consciousness that we have to actually believe in to activate. And so I'd like to thank you for listening. This is going to be a multi-part discussion on the origin of Femmyst, how I see alchemy and the mystical journey of transformation and transmutation. So I'm going to come back with some more on that, the 4 stages of alchemy, the 7 stages of alchemy, how I feel they play out in our experience of transformation, and a little bit more about that. So I think there'll be a part 2, potentially a part 3. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to connect with me on social media, I am at Femmyst on Instagram, Femmyst, Femmyst on Instagram. And if this podcast could help anyone, or you think it might be of interest to anyone, please share. I am always welcoming of, meeting new people, having my story help other people, new people, whatever you feel inclined to share, please do, and hit me up on social media. Thank you very much. And till next time.